Welcome to the Go Rhody podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brand. Tonight's topic is the state of college basketball. I have the great Dick Weiss here. How are you doing, Dick? Thanks for
I'm
stopping
great.
by.
I'm good, Scott. It's the middle of the summer. There's not a lot happening unless you want to watch LeBron try to take over the pre-Olympic tune-ups against South Sudan and Germany. And they just finished up the Peach Jam, but it's kind of a quiet area. I think most coaches are getting involved in recruiting right now. Ironically, I think coaches are doing less recruiting of high school players than ever before. They seem to be saving all their ammunition to try to lock up transfers. The game has changed so much, Scott. It's just crazy right now. I mean, the idea of NIL. Look, I get it. When it first came out, it was to try to get players some extra money, but frankly, it's turned into pay for play. And you have an awful lot of people involved in an arms race for the best players and for the best transfers. And it's really become harder for the mid-majors. You work really hard to develop talent, and then all of a sudden they're gone. I mean, we talk about Rhode Island, they have 5 new players this year. Now they're lucky because I think the kid Lawrence is going to be very good. I think the kid Sebastian Thomas made a good decision coming home after a year in Albany. So that gives them some offensive firepower to go along with a little bit of improved size. And they have Green back healthy, so they could be okay this year. I mean, I would say middle of the pack right now, but you never know.
The thing is that what Archie Miller did, well, they don't have the same staff anymore. Archie Miller's running the show now. It's his team. He has his fingerprints on it. And
Good.
He kept his core 5 players. And I don't know any other team in the Atlantic 10 that was able to do that.
I mean, look, the key to success is keeping players. And I love the fact that Rhode Island has a lot of experienced players. There are a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors, even a graduate student in the program now. They've been through it. They kind of understand what you need to do to succeed in the Atlantic 10. And it's such a fluid league, Scott. It's just crazy. I thought Dayton had a good team last year, but they were hardly invincible. I thought VCU was very good last year. I thought Richmond was very good last year. I would like to see it reach a point if the NCAA ever expands the tournament to 76, where they give a lot more looks to the mid-major programs like the Atlantic 10. It wasn't all that long ago in the 90s where the A10 was getting 4, possibly even 5 teams in the tournament. It was crazy. And they had national contenders when you had Temple and UMass, and
Yes.
Frankly, in '98, even Rhode Island, who was right there with Stanford.
Yeah, that was a very painful game. They're up by 8 points.
Oh, listen, I can get that. I know Jim Herrick, and I really like that team. I love the guards. I love Wheeler. I love Tino Mobley is a Philadelphia kid. He went to Doherty before he went to Central Institute, and they were right there. To lose that game by 2 points was hard, because I honestly believe they could have been in the Final Four that year.
Yeah, everything was moving in that direction.
It really was.
They were playing perfectly, and then just everything went wrong. And even people who could make but Preston Murphy made his foul shots. You got to give a shout out to him in Alabama. He's been on the show. You love Preston Murphy.
You know what scares you is the fact that Rhody people are just like everyone else. They always remember every play of the biggest game that the team played, and it sticks with you for a lifetime. If you're a college basketball fan, you still do root for the team on the front of the jerseys. And I think you remember all the chances you had. I guess the last time, did they win the Atlantic 10 in 2018?
Yeah, 1 year they won the title, and 1 year they won the championship. 2017. I don't know if you know this, but Dan Hurley was almost irrelevant. They lost to Fordham, and they had to win the remaining 9 games, including the VCU game as a champion. if he didn't win all those games, they wouldn't have been in the NCAA, and that changes the whole narrative of who he is.
And it's interesting too. 2 years ago, they went through a stretch at Connecticut where they lost 5 straight games, and the fan base was really down on him at that point. It was almost to a point where it's getting ugly, and then he turns it around and plays near perfect basketball in the West Regional, and they win it, the first of 2 championships. But it's harder than ever to keep continuity and to keep your success going, because you literally do not know what type of team you're going to have year to year.
That's what makes it so incredible to win 2 years in a row with
It
different
really
players.
is. And they've got a nice team this year too. But I think it's good for New England when Rhode Island has 2 good teams, when Connecticut is nationally competitive, because those are the teams right now that are probably making the biggest waves in college basketball. Look, I know last year Rhody was 12-20, but they're a better team than that. They're a better program than that. And I'm hoping that they can turn those numbers around under Archie. I mean, I've known that family for a long time.
I'm not
I
surprised.
actually met John when he was coaching Blackhawk, and he was a great high school coach. And Sean and I were really good friends when he was just starting out in coaching. I remember when he was 10 years old, they had a doubleheader at the Palestra, and there's this little ball handling wizard out there. And the guy and the six, I called Pat Williams up right after their doubleheader. I said, "You have to sign this kid." And he shows up the next day, and the guy who introduced him in a tuxedo was like 8 years old, and it's Archie Miller. Wow. He understood the legacy of the family. I mean, his brother had huge success at Pitt. And look, he was recruited to play at Carolina State, which is pretty high level as far as I'm concerned. The thing about Archie that I love is the amount of success he had at Dayton. And that's a mid-major program. He went 4 years where they went to the NCAA tournament right before he got to Indiana. No, I'm never really sure if Indiana's a good job for anybody, because they still think Bob Knight's coming back. But he had a great run at Dayton, and obviously he's done it. So I'm sure people are hoping he can get it done again, because if they win, I think Rhody can put people in Ryan Center. I think that they will come, because I think it's an important winter sport up there. Yeah, I sometimes think kids look and are overwhelmed by playing at the next level. It's only a good decision if you play. You go to the Big East and you sit on the bench 4 years. How much better is that than if you go to the Atlantic 10, you play for 4 years, and probably wind up with at least a European offer? I mean, the kids at the end of the bench, I mean, they get their money when they're there. Villanova, for example, is giving every scholarship player a minimum of $75,000. That's great, but not all of them are going to the NBA. Jay Wright's not coaching there anymore.
Yeah, how have they been able to keep the same coach for 3 years now, Neptune?
This is his 3rd year right now.
Yeah.
I would say that he's under a little bit of pressure. I mean, they are look, it's a 6,500 seat campus arena. 2,000 of those seats go to the undergraduates, and maybe another 600 go to coaches, players, administration. So that doesn't leave you a lot of room to fill the seats. So they're charging seat licensing. And frankly, this year I was told they were charging a donation fund just to be able to buy seats. Well, that's great, but if these people, typical Catholic school, if you go to school there, you can be stuck in a situation where you want to return your investment. And fans get tired quickly, and donors get tired get tired even quicker. I honestly believe that donors play a bigger role whether a coach stays or goes than
Oh,
anywhere else right now, because that if they pull the plug on dollars and cents, I mean, then a school that doesn't have power football can't possibly make a positive investment on their athletic program.
well, we have the former CVS president, Ryan, named after the Ryan Center, and he has a huge influence. So he makes a big part of the decisions, probably picking a great president. We have a great president right now who's so into sports. So
That's great. No, I listen.
exactly right about that.
There's no reason why this team can't finish in the top four in the league every year. I mean,
Yeah.
Basketball's important. I mean, look, the 40s, they got to the finals against Kentucky in 46. I mean, I thought that the 78 team that lost to Duke by a point in the first round
Jack Kraft
had Sly Williams. That was a special group. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
so there's a history of success with the team, with some of the coaches who have been there, and some of the fast break traditions that have evolved out of New England basketball. So it's not like it hasn't happened before. So it's not like it won't happen again.
And by the end of the season, their offense was fine. And I was listening to the announcers. They lost their first round against St. Louis, but they were praising the Archie Miller's offensive schemes. They were going right downhill, running and making the best.
I think
they couldn't play defense.
He runs pretty good transition offense. They play that pack line defense.
That,
Dick and Tony Bennett play. When it's good, the way it is at Virginia, it's good. But when it's not so good, you struggle if you fall behind.
We feel as the fans here that it's a problem because it takes so long to learn. Fortunately, we have about 6 guys coming back, and and Thomas as well, who
played here originally.
But sure. What's your opinion on it? I know he'll never give that up. That's his, his trade.
I'm not a big fan of pack line defense. I think it's a hard thing to learn. Virginia won a national championship with it, but they also lost to UMBC the year before.
Yeah.
So, anything's possible. You really set yourself up, but he plays a lot slower tempo than Archie. Archie wants to play up tempo, and he wants to play transition offense, and I don't blame him.
Yeah. And he tried. One of the interesting points that you made is that people are thinking that since they're probably going to be raising the field of 68 to 6 or 8 teams, that the mid majors are going to profit by that. But I was talking to you a few days ago, and that
I'm worried about that because the people that are pushing it hardest are the SEC and the Big Ten. Yeah. They're not pushing it to give those bids away to smaller schools. And that bothers me a little bit. I think that if they're going to increase to 76, they desperately need to make room for at least 4 more mid majors, because these teams, my theory has always been, if you don't have a winning record in your conference, no matter where you play, you shouldn't be eligible to play in the NCAA tournament. You pick the conference you want to play in. You get all the benefits, you get all the TV money. If you have a losing record, I'm not sure if you deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. And the worst part about it is, it's great that conferences like the Big Ten, who, by the way, has not won a national championship since year 2000.
How many people know that?
10 teams.
You surprised me the other day. We were talking on the phone, and I did not know that. How could I not know that fact? It doesn't make sense. But
if you think about it, when's the last time a Pac-12 team won?
Yeah,
it was Arizona. That was in the late 90s. So it's you're not locked in, and I am sure there's a lot of envy and jealousy among certain of these power conferences. The idea that Jay Wright could win 2, Danny Hurley could win 2, within the last 8 years. I mean, probably doesn't play real well with those schools. So, I mean, and if you create, I've always questioned the whole idea of analytics when you pick when you pick teams to play in a tournament. I still believe in the eye test. I still believe there are a lot of good teams out there that people miss on, and that's why you see a number of first week upsets. I mean, I think that I think people have to be really careful about just creating their own narrative and thinking, well, this team is the 30th ranked team in the NCAA net, so they automatically should be in. That doesn't always factor in. I wish that when they pick teams, they would put more emphasis on the last 10 games, because I believe that teams should get better from the start of the season until the end of the season. And a lot of times that doesn't happen, but teams build up their resume with early season wins in November and December. And by the end of the year, I mean, they're just slightly above average. And I'm not sure if you should benefit from that. And the other thing that bothers me the most is I think that there's a self-imposed ceiling that they put on these mid-major conferences I shouldn't even call them mid-major conferences. I should call them non-BCS conferences.
Yeah.
That shouldn't exist. I mean, if a team's good, give them the recognition they deserve. You saw, look, Gonzaga finally worked themselves up to a point where they were getting ones and twos. That doesn't happen very often, but you know, I mean, they'll go out and they'll play anybody, and hopefully it pays off, because and their league is probably better than people think. It might have been a better league last year than the Pac-12 its last year. I mean, if you consider San Francisco, Santa Clara, and St. Mary's, I mean, it might have been a better league. But you know, I mean, I just have a problem with certain things people do when it comes to selection committee, and you don't know what goes on in that room since no one can get in to see it.
And when you talk about Gonzaga, it's a little humorous. I don't know if they do that anymore, but in the past, whenever an Eastern coach was hired, the first thing they would say is they're going to be the Gonzaga of
the East.
All the time.
No,
I get it. That now.
I get it. But you know what? I mean, Mark has been the head coach there 25 years. It took him a little while to establish that. It didn't happen overnight. Programs. I mean, part of me would like to see the Atlantic 10 play better schools. The problem is that a lot of these highly ranked schools won't play at home and home.
That's a big thing.
I mean, I guess your best games this year will be Providence, Yale, and Charleston.
Yeah,
it's my guess. I mean, non-league.
Yeah, obviously Providence is right up there, but
and then you get into the league season. But you know, I mean, I think that there's limitations unless you go to, say, a Battle for Atlantis, or you know, who will occasionally take a mid-major program. I mean, you're in a situation where it's hard to build resume. It's hard to build numbers up there, and it's. I mean, I'm all for Rhode Island scheduling a game in Providence, in Boston, and maybe even trying to get into Barclays Center on a regular basis, because you need to expand the scope of what you're doing.
But there are some exceptions, and you look at Dayton's schedule this year, out of conference, phenomenal. And then you look at George Mason. I had Tony Skin on last guest. They're playing against Duke.
Well, he's not afraid. I mean, look, he and Kim English were not afraid to challenge themselves. And I think that lends itself to improving not just the quality, but the focus that people have in your brand name.
Another trend in the Atlantic 10, I find that it's a very deep conference now, more so than it's been in a long time. And you were referring to the older days. 2014, they had 6 teams,
Yep.
the NCAA. I feel like there's solid teams. There might be 6 to 8 solid teams. George Mason isn't even part of the conversation. I know that team pretty well. Tony has some phenomenal recruits. He doesn't want you to know about them yet, but he brought in some great guys. And
Well, a lot of people don't want any of the power schools to know about them until they suit up and start beating them. I get it. And look, I think this. I've always felt that the Atlantic 10 has done more resourceful recruiting than any conference in the East Coast. They find players. They may be from Europe. They may even go the junior college route. They may be from kids that people think are in-betweeners that wind up going to school and really flourishing in that environment. But I think that you have to, if you decide the way you want to play, and you go out, and then you can find, and it has to be somebody you like. Too many people recruit off a list these days. They look at a top 50 list and say, I got to get a top 50 player or a top 100 player. And a lot of times people kind of escape the net. And guys who might not play in the EBYL or Under Armour or Adidas, they play in these for smaller AAU programs, and people miss on them. It just happens because they just don't see them. And I think the other thing that's interesting is I think there's a lot of people who, like I said, and we talked about this before, who are afraid to go after too many incoming freshmen because they're either going to be too good to leave or not good enough, and they're going to wind up recruiting over their head. I don't like it.
To them. And you're right, there has to, just by the process of elimination, are there strong high school players that will not have a home in
yes, and I think a lot of people are signing at a level that is lower than what they ordinarily get. Because the idea of bringing 5 freshmen is over, and so a lot of people will save their freshmen for transfers. And if you want to get good quick, you can do it quickly. K-State. Jerome Tang took over the team, brought in 8 to 10 new players, got to a final 8 at the Garden in his first year. So you can do it quickly. If you get the right kids, and you have the right money to pay the kids who are transferred.
Duquesne did that too.
They did. I think that, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if LeBron gets involved now that the guy from his high school team is coaching.
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yeah, I thought Bronny was going to be going to Duquesne.
He went there. I'll tell you what, it would have been a good school for him. Now he had 2 pretty good games. His last 2 games in Vegas were decent. He got a combined 25 points, made 3 of 8 threes. So it wasn't like he had some dreadful outings in California, and his first couple of games in Vegas where he just couldn't make shots. He at one point he was 0 for 15 from the 3, but he kind of turned it around a little bit. I still wonder if he's ready to make the quantum leap to the NBA after averaging 4.5 points at Southern Cal. But he has something going for him that neither of us have going for him. A father who might be the best player in the world. A lot of people in this country don't really have a middle game. The bigs all want to stay outside and shoot the ball. The smalls want to go inside, and they wind up doing the bulk of the rebounding at the guard spots. It's just crazy.
Well, we have a player, one of the best point guards in Rhode Island history, Jeff Dowden, hoping to have him on the show soon.
That'd be great.
A phenomenal mid-range shooter, and there's some that feel like it's a disadvantage. He's okay at 3 points, but he's just deadly.
Right.
It's a mid-range, and it's not part of the game. And it's almost like he's being punished for having a good mid-range shot.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people miss out on that. Right now,
I think so
when you
too.
look at the pro game, I mean, it's secondary break, spread the floor four ways, kick it inside, kick it back outside, take a three. Teams are shooting 30 to 43s in any given game right now, and that is crazy. I mean,
Even the
I mean,
Celtics lose games because
they do.
we'll get those games where you're shooting 6 for 36. And
Yep.
maybe if you threw in a few more mid-range shots, it would be a difference. But the tendency is to shoot more and it'll work out. And I don't know if it didn't work for John Starks too well in the 1994. He shot and
I know.
let's go over to the NIL.
Right.
Where is that going? And I know I'm just throwing a
It
softball.
is. It is out of control. I I read where one coach says his main job now is not coaching; it's raising money. I mean, when they decided to put in the NIL in, it was a nice feel. These kids are finally going to get money, but now it really has turned into pay for play. I mean, it's scary when you think about the transfers and some of the money that were thrown out there this year. Cliff Amore had a pretty average senior year at Rutgers, $2 million. I mean, great Ossifer, who was played for Utah State, goes to Washington, $2 million. Jeremy Roach from Duke goes to Baylor, 1.5 million. These are big numbers for guys. I mean, a lot of the big kids are literally staying in school now because, like Hunter Dickinson, they can make more money if they remain amateurs than if they go into the league and discover that low post centers are not in vogue anymore. You don't see people stepping in unless you can step out and make a three, face up, and you have some quickness to play the pick and roll. You're not making that lick.
Well, yet some of the players that stayed 4 years, they're showing that it was worth it, the extra year.
I mean,
Very well,
I'm
which is
hoping.
great, I think.
I am hoping that people reassess the way they draft. I was personally happy to see Zach Edey go non.
That's who I was referring to.
Yeah, I mean to Memphis. He was there 4 years. He got better every year. He does a lot of things that will work for him in the pros. He gets to the line on a regular basis. He rebounds at both ends. Maybe he's not the quickest guy in the world, but he's the biggest guy in the world. And that makes a big difference at 7'4". And he will compete when he's on the floor. And I like that. And he seems like he's a great kid. So those things all work for you. I mean, I'm personally hoping that guys like that make it because it's going to open the door for college, for NBA's scouts to take a look at older players as opposed to just thinking about all the things that they can't do. I mean, look, if you're a player, the best thing that can happen to you is if you leave after your freshman year, because there's a good chance you're going to go 10 spots higher than if you stay around for your sophomore year, where people are suddenly picking out all the things you can't do. And it does catch up to you.
Yeah. Here's another one I'm going to throw at you. Tyler Kolek with the Knicks now. No one, you thought he was going to be in the rotation. Now they think he's going to be ahead of Payne.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, he'll definitely play for them. I don't know how many minutes he'll play because you don't know how many minutes Brunson wants to play.
Yeah.
At that position. And Brunson can play 40 minutes. He never gets tired.
Tibbs doesn't like 10-minute rotations.
But I love Kolek. He's a great kid. He's fun to deal with. He has no filter. There's a kid who starts at Mason. He made the right decision playing for Shaka. I think Shaka Smart is one of the better individual instruction guys in the country. And Kolek had 1 year where he was the best player in the league, another year where he was a first team all-league player. He has become a very good passer. I mean, he was getting mid-double figures down the stretch in Vegas. And, there's always room for a kid who knows how to play. And he's a little, maybe he's a poor man, John Stockton, but he knows how to play.
And he's not fast, but it seems like Jalen Brunson is making deceleration the thing to do now. And Tyler's
His
doing that too.
basketball IQ is outstanding. He mastered that uh, the game he had at Villanova where you just back people in and then shoot turnarounds. When he was a senior at Villanova, I thought he was the smartest player in college basketball. And it showed up when he wound up being the National Player of the Year after they won. I mean, they just didn't win that tournament in 18. They blew through that tournament. They won every game by double figures, and he did whatever it took. And the thing I love about Brunson, I'll always love about Brunson, is the fact that he was willing to be a team first guy. When he first got there, he could have easily been the point guard, but Ryan Archidiakono had been there 3 years. And so he just played the opposite side for a year. And then he took over the team. And 2 years later, I mean, he made all the right moves. I was so happy. I think people, a classic example like Kolek, second round pick, but first round talent.
And the contract money that he made at the second round didn't match anyone else who was a second round pick.
No, which makes
Bundle
me
for a
feel
second round pick. It was just,
yeah, which makes me feel good for him.
I exactly, that's where I was going with that.
Oh, I thought Kolek was one of my favorite players in the Big East this year. And, you know, he's a local kid, which makes it really nice for you guys. I mean,
Who made the mistake at Rhode Island for not recruiting him? How does that happen? And I'm saying that facetiously.
well, I could say the same thing about Providence.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
you got me
he's
there.
a Big East, he's an all Big East player.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people look at a white gym rat kid and they say, can he play at this level against the athletes we're going to put on the floor? And they forget the fact this kid really knows how to play. I mean, I thought he was terrific from the time he got to Mason. And it wasn't long before he realized he could play at a higher level. And he's been successful ever since he went to Marquette.
Now, in the NIL, what is it commanding the high dollars? Is it like 1 or 2 million now?
Well, I think a lot depends on position and how many available players that they are. You know, they started to run out of centers this year.
Yes.
So the centers who waited till late wound up with a lot more money. And I also think that it's need. I think people tend to rank transfers to where, I mean, as far as like the big schools, how can they help us? I mean, Arkansas signed 2 big kids. Baylor signed two elite players. I mean, people will sign players. I mean, Kentucky filled the roster with new players this year. I mean, and so did Louisville. So, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I would say there's probably a 75 good transfers in any given year that can play at a pretty high level because they have experience, which coaches love, and they have showed they can score in double figures, which coaches love, and they know how to play. I think a lot of it is work ethic. I think a lot of kids who come to college don't have a feeling for how hard you have to work to be successful. And I think they come in and think that I'll just show up and I'll do exactly what I did in high school because the game was a lot easier in high school. Then they get to a level like the Atlantic 10 and find out, you know, the difference in guard play between the Atlantic 10 and the Big East isn't that great.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people in the Atlantic 10 who could play in the Big East and be successful.
It was a guard league. I think we have to start looking at it a little differently. We have some big guys in this year's, and Duran just left.
Right.
That's the star power. We don't have a top 25 team in the Atlantic 10, but one of the reasons is because you don't have the high known player like Duran Holmes. Now, I feel that St. Louis should be in the top 25 or close to it.
Well, I can't wait to see Robbie available. I mean, I'm really excited about that. And I think that I think their coach did a really good job at Indiana State last year. I mean, they were fun to watch.
Oh, I know. It was so
Yeah, now that's a classic example of a team that I could have seen go to the tournament, the NCAA tournament, very easily. And I think that they and Seton Hall, the two teams that played in the final, they were NCAA tournament teams. They
it was a
just
great
didn't,
game, wasn't it?
they just didn't get in the brackets. But could they have played in the brackets? Very easily. And it turned out to be a fabulous game. And both coaches really are to be congratulated. And I'm sure it couldn't have been easy for those kids because they knew the coach was going to go to St. Louis as soon as the season was over.
Now, Robbie Avila has a chance to really improve the Atlantic 10 in an area that's always been a problem, media
Right.
and television, and filling in the
You know,
seat
he
everywhere
built
he
a culture.
goes. He should have a sellout.
He built his own cultural phenomenon when he was there. It was great. I mean, he has skills. I mean, a lot of people look at him and say, "What is this?" And then they watch him play and they say, "Oh, that's what it is."
I didn't know what to think of him when I first saw him, and
Yeah, me neither.
yeah, okay, I feel better. What is actually going on? And it's happening right now with FSU and Clemson.
Well, I think football runs the world right now.
Yeah,
I really do. And I think you are much more attractive if you have a top 20 football team than you are if you have a top 10 basketball team. I don't know if the ACC felt they could get anything by adding UConn in a 40,000 seat stadium that was only holding 20,000 for home games at most.
yeah.
At most. I mean, the basketball program, men's and women's basketball programs were great. I mean, under Jim and Gino, they were just great programs. But I don't know that the last expansion that went around was based solely on football, as opposed to basketball. And frankly, I'm not sure they needed basketball to succeed when they had Duke and Carolina and Virginia. And, you know, they had enough good basketball. They needed to upgrade their football. And sadly now, I mean, Clemson and Florida State both went out. Because they know what the television prices are. They know what the ACC is paying their teams. And they know what the Big Ten and the SEC are paying their teams. And there's a huge difference.
Now they're talking about Big 12 as a candidate for.
Well, I mean, Brett Yormark will offer. I mean, he's not afraid to do anything to try to increase his numbers and become a national conference. I mean, look, for a while, he was even throwing out the idea of taking Gonzaga and UConn to get the basketball out there. But, you know, they don't. I'm not sure if anybody wants to take a team that doesn't have football.
Yeah.
This doesn't work. And Frank, I mean, football, unless you're in a power conference, is a losing proposition. I mean, I look at Temple. They're lucky if they do 10,000 a game, and they keep trying to tell people that they're a Division I program, but they're playing in the American. And with the exception of Navy once every 4 years, they have to go on the road for all of their games. They have to fly to every game they go to. There are no local teams left now that UConn's out. And I just think, you know, they play their home games at Lincoln Financial Center, which is where the Eagles play. $1 million every time they open the building. They can't possibly make up that number in crowd size.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the best teams that Rhode Island's playing, and I neglected to add
Temple's in the Hall of Fame against them.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how good Temple is. Times have changed. I mean,
should they go back to the Atlantic 10?
Listen, I think I've been pushing for them to do it for years, but you have people in that athletic department who are infatuated with the idea of football and the money that they can make once the new TV contracts come in for the playoffs. But, you know, I don't want to be anybody's whipping boy. I don't want to be at the bottom of the pack every year. You get nothing out of it. The best thing that they did at Temple, they joined when Al Golden was there, and he built the program back up. They joined the MAC and played on a 5-game basis, and they scheduled Eastern schools, and they were able to stay in the Atlantic 10. I mean, and frankly, that's where they belong. It's a bus league. You can get everywhere without having to go to an airport. I mean, you can get, I mean, in Temple's case, they can get to DC, they can get to New York, they can get to New England. And it doesn't really break the bank the way it does, because every sport has to travel. In the American, the closest team that they would play on a regular basis is probably East Carolina. Then you got to go down into Florida, Tulane, Texas, Oklahoma. These programs aren't exactly around the corner, and they keep losing teams because those teams go to play in larger conferences if they have the luxury of getting into them.
Now, UMass is going to be in the MAC next year. I had a guest on, and he's an expert on Massachusetts, and we did the numbers. There's not a lot of money to be made in MAC football.
No, I mean, come on, they're
But
not.
they had to do. Why did they do that? I know they have a football team that doesn't match the rest of the conference in the Atlantic 10.
You know what? I don't know. I think it was a mistake.
Is there a booster that is just putting a lot of money?
Probably, but I mean, you know what? That stuff only lasts so long.
Yeah.
I mean, it runs dry after a while. I was never a big fan of the idea of UMass going to the MAC. No one's going to know them. No one's going to see them. They're going to be playing against teams that nobody know about. I mean, the biggest problem UConn had when they were in the American, teams would come in and play them in Hartford, and they would have no interest in going to see them. I mean, they want to see Providence, Villanova, St. John's, Georgetown. They want those teams to be in their wheelhouse. I mean, they want to have that level of excitement. And the fact they got lucky because the Midwest is producing so many good teams right now, and Marquette and Creighton. I mean, you know, that the games are a lot more meaningful when you have teams come in with national reputations. I don't know what UMass is going to get when MAC teams come here to play. I don't know what kind of crowds they're going to get. I mean, I did a book with John Calipari in '96.
I know you did.
When they went to the Final Four, and I mean, their arena was selling out every home game. Now they won 20 in a row before they lost to George Washington.
The question is, Dick, who didn't you do a book with? Not who did you do a book with, because that list is just phenomenal. I do the research. I was very impressed by that part of it.
I was lucky. Like I said, I got the best thing I ever did. I got a chance to spend a year in Kentucky. No one had been inside the big blue curtain. It was like going to the Pentagon because no one had been inside. And it was the year that they lost to Duke on the Leitner shot. But it was just a great experience.
Oh my gosh!
You were
at that game?
I was at every game that year.
Believe
me, that game hit home. It cost me about $500,000 because they win that game. They're winning the whole thing because they'd already beaten Indiana. Yeah,
just a tremendous game. Who should we be worried about in the Atlantic 10 for moving into another conference? And Dayton, I don't think is a candidate for the Big East.
I don't think you're going to lose. I don't think there's anybody from the conference that's going to make it. I just don't.
And who would come in if we lose?
No one's going to the Big East. That's wishful thinking. So they don't need anybody to go. They have enough problems. The way it is now with 11 teams, they can play home and home at 20. They don't need that. I don't know. They want to split the pot again. So I don't see it ever happening. Dayton does sell home games out on a regular basis. They do get great crowd support, but I'm not
You
sure
see,
I'm not sure the media market is big enough to
mhm.
support that.
Well, they don't
We,
like, yeah, when you have a Xavier there, they don't like Rhode
right.
Island when you have a PC in a state. That's
I totally agree with that. I mean, you don't want, look, I mean, Temple tried to get into the Big East for the longest time. They actually got thrown out of the Big East there in football. They tried to get the Big East basketball for the longest time. There's no way Villanova was going to vote to let them in, even when John Chaney was there. This wasn't going to happen. I mean, you don't want to split off what you have. Nobody wants to give that up.
so one of the biggest problems with college basketball is there's a huge gulf between basketball and football in this country. And because of that, football is driving not only in the NFL, but it's driving college basketball as well. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, football drives everything. I mean,
That's our sport.
when you do 109,000 at Penn State, pays
Yeah,
for a lot of sports. I mean, the parking alone pays for a lot of sports.
the television, everything.
So they drive everything. In television, the worst bowl game in December is usually a higher rated game than the biggest basketball game in December.
Gonna let you go. This was
All right, pal.
tons of fun, and thanks so
Best
much.
of luck with your podcast.
Okay, and thanks for the research on the Atlantic 10 that you did. They'll
Well,
appreciate it.
I didn't want to embarrass you when we got on.
Yeah, I
with a
wasn't
lack of
expecting that,
knowledge.
the knowledge that you have on Rhode Island, because you can't follow every team. Well, you go
We can
and
try.
do another book with someone else. We'll see
All
what
right,
we
pal.
get next.
It was nice talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much, and have a great night.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.